All right, so we're traveling around, and went through several cultures
Yes.
on our travels. Okay, and
Believe it or not, south of France and Paris, very different cultures.
well, it's like Georgia and New York, two different cultures.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. Very
All
big
right?
country, France.
You know, about the same distance away too. All right,
Very true.
So, and when we're talking about, we're noticing rapport. There's a different way in Paris to have rapport than there is down in Monte Carlo. There's a different kind of rapport that is different than, Lithuania, which is a completely different kind of rapport, which is different than, London, Italy, France, Spain, any of these other places that you go. And even in the United States, in different parts of the country, rapport is different.
Yes.
We talk a lot about rapport and getting rapport, and the bottom line is, unless you have rapport, you basically aren't getting anything done.
Right.
So I really wanted to talk to you about it because, you have to understand, because you people are from all over the world. I mean, Germany, completely different rapport.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think that...
And there are rules in most of these countries, but
Yeah.
the rules can be bent a little bit, or you can hit the boundaries of them.
Yeah. So, let me give you an example. So, we're in Lithuania, and we're talking about phone anchoring, right? And they're saying, well, that's first anchoring. So, you get on the phone and say, hey, this is so-and-so.
How are you
are you
doing?
doing today? And everything
No, you
like,
don't.
like stunned, silence, okay?
No, how
so I
are
go
you?
through the entire freaking presentation, and, somebody raises their hand in the back, and they're just like, we no do that. It's like, you don't
No,
do what? Like phone
no.
calls?
He didn't
it's
say it like that.
It's just, look, it doesn't matter. So, not my point. So, he's like, I'm like, what do you mean you don't do that? It's like, we don't ask how people are doing on the
Right.
phone. And it's like, I was talking to some people, and it's like, if I walked up to somebody in the street or
How are you
somebody that I was
doing?
talking to and said, how are you doing today? Their initial response is, who are you and why do you want to know?
Well, I talked to a girl on the plane from Strasbourg, and she said, and I was talking to her about this in Lithuania, and she said, I know. She's like, when I first went to the U.S., she said, we don't ask that in Strasbourg either. She said, I went to the U.S. the first time, and someone said, how are you? She said, well, I'm fine. What's wrong? Do you have a problem?
Yeah, it's like,
She's like, I didn't understand why they were asking how I am. We don't do that.
yeah. I said, what do you do? They say, hello, and they say, hello, this is this, and then they say why they're calling. And it's like, oh, you people are just crazy. But I mean, I get it. So you understand that if little things like, hi, how are you doing today, doesn't work out well, because especially for people that used to be run by Russia. All right. So you get the idea. All right. So what we were looking at is there were several different, just kind of give you guys an example of how you would get rapport in different parts of the world. In Paris, Kim was really successful anytime she had a way in. Okay, so like the guy at the parade, you started talking to his son, all of a sudden the guy gets really, really friendly.
Well, I started
Because he had a
talking.
doorway
Well, I
in.
started talking to him, and I asked, "Do you speak?" In my worst French, or my best French, which is really bad. Do you speak English? And he said, "Oh no, my son." And he gets a son who knew about 5 words.
5 words of English, and apparently that passes. He knew about as much
Hey,
English as we knew French.
No, I knew a lot more French than I knew a lot more French than that. But it was really terrible. But I used it anyway, and but it was great. Hand motions are great.
So, but it was really cool. So we're, it's Bastille Day, and we're in this field with about 1 million other people. And people keep tromping over top of us because we're sitting down, And I look at the guy next to me, and he looks at me, looks at the guy next to me. And I looked at him and said, because that's all I had, because I have no French. And he's like, and he pulled me, goes,
We should close.
like this, okay? So having a common problem, one of the ways that we talk about getting rapport,
And the one thing
worked really well in Paris.
And the people there are generally, it's acceptable to be a little bit exuberant and warm. I found people that are pretty warm usually in Paris.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you have a reason and start, it just kind of flows. So Lithuania is like the stellar opposite in many ways. Although the people are very nice, it's a very cold culture when you meet somebody. There's a coolness to the introduction and a certain level you can hit, and that's acceptable with no how are you, of course. And then it seems like, but every culture has a certain level of warmth or friendliness, sociability that's acceptable in the beginning. And you just have to know what those levels are to an extent. You've learned them. And then actually what worked there, I think, was humor. Because after a certain number of minutes, I think I asked someone, so after a certain number of minutes, you say something funny and then they smile.
Yeah.
But they don't smile in the beginning usually so much. But it kind of was it is a learning process. But it's like I said, it's hitting the boundaries. How soon can I step up this far?
Yeah.
What position can I take that will be accepted in this culture? Can I take friendly acquaintance? Or like in the Georgia, you can be friend right up front.
Oh, yeah.
And no problem. In Lithuania, I'd wait 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
In Lithuania, you have
and
to be
hit
much more patient.
Acquaintance.
What works really well in Lithuania also was anytime you had a common problem. Okay, or no, even better, when you showed that you understood them, you got them, you understood what was going on with them. There was one girl at the seminar, she was kind of standoffish, and we sat down and we were talking to her, and she was a perfectionist and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, and of course I went, well, that just means you're really slow at learning, not a good rapport getter. Kim, who's had experience with this, went, yeah, I understand. And this girl just went, oh, thank God somebody gets me. Okay.
Well, I do understand.
So,
yeah.
But it was like, boom, it was immediate. You could see the result. Okay, where, smart ass apparently doesn't work very well. So
I mean, I think in any rapport situation, first you have to understand the social rules to an extent. And they all have different social rules. 2, you have to feel out the boundaries. How quickly can you move in? What opening gets you in with them? Is it humor with that group? Is it common problem? Is it noticing something in the environment? What gets you in? And sometimes don't ignore your being a foreigner as your ability to break some rules a little bit and move in a little faster, because sometimes that works. Especially
works great in London.
Oh God, in London,
I'm an
it's
American.
the
You know how
best.
stupid we are. It's like a big rapport getter.
It actually is an incredible rapport
Really,
getter.
it just works so good.
But it also, I mean, just in London, pretending not to understand the rules is a great rapport getter. As long as you're not rude. They don't like rude. But if you're too warm, too much eye contact, speak to them in the tube, it's a great. So those are really the 3 areas that you work on when you're in a foreign country or in your own country.
It's like, well, I need rapport with Swiss and Germans. Okay. Now, it's interesting because Germans are very not the French. Okay.
Well, it's according to where in France. They're not Parisians. Okay.
No, but Germans are not. They don't react to emotion as well as They're very, boom, boom, boom. Okay. A great way to get rapport with Germans is, number one, you don't want to build a connection. It's just like a little bit Lithuanians. You don't want to build a connection right away. Okay. They want a reason that you're connecting. Okay, and a lot of it is if you understand them, that's a big reason. If you have a common problem, that's a big reason. Let's see, if you need to connect with them, a lot of with them it's the level of rapport, positioning of power. All right, you cannot use subordinate at all with Germans. Yes, you're right. They're absolutely, completely analytical. So they react well to authority. Okay, if you can demonstrate you understand what they're doing, just kind of like mildly leader, okay, they react better to a leader than they do to an equal. Just a little bit of a leader. You're not going to like dominate them because they don't like that either. But you can go a little bit leaders, a little bit, hi, this is what I think, this is going on. This is what you need. This is why you need me. This is what I think we can do together. That's going to build rapport with Germans much, much faster, okay?
But also remembering that in every country there are edges to this and certain levels of warmth you can
Yeah.
have, and you want to step those up. And also always tiptoe around the boundaries. Because, I mean, I'm in Lithuania I'm buying something. I'm at a booth at the market. And the one guy just seemed more open. And he spoke English very well. And he was younger, which always helps because it's just a cultural thing with change of, well, who's in charge in
Yeah.
Lithuania in particular. And I tiptoed on the boundary to talk to him. And then he was open to it. So
Yeah.
I stepped over it. And he was open to warm, friendly friend position immediately, like within 4 minutes. Great guy, as a matter of fact. And so always tiptoe on the boundaries and test the water in those areas because you will find the people you can cross the boundaries with.
Yeah.
And you'll learn about the culture.
You also have to remember, rapport is a fluid thing. Okay, it's not like I'm going to go mildly leader. Once you get established a level of connection with, for instance, the Germans, then you can back off a little bit to equal, a little connect as a friend you understand. But whenever you make your point, you're going to have to go up to leader again. But you're never going to hit subordinate ever. All right, the Swiss don't.
I haven't been around too many Swiss. Have you?
I
Couple.
have.
Yeah, a little bit. They're analytical as well, though.
They're very much like the Germans. They're very
That I've seen.
analytical. So they're always trying to figure things out. All right. So you have to always with them. You have to let them know where things are going, so that they don't have to figure things out. Then they can relax a little bit. Does that make sense?
It is noticing. I mean, the things to notice, like we said, are what position is normal, what position is normal immediately, what position, how quickly is it all right to move forward with it and accelerate the connection. What ends do they usually use? So use all of those things and you will be able to, you have to start to analyze each culture, and in many countries, different parts of the country and different generations.
Yeah, the
So,
generations are all different.
Generations are very
But
different.
with Germans, you have to be just a tad more forceful. Look, if you're running around Europe and somebody cuts in line in front of you, 9 out of 10 times it's a German.
Germans are really bad for that.
They just push their way to the front of the line, and if you don't say anything to them, they'll stay there. If you say something to them, they'll move. But they are used to imposing their will on people, so they actually react well to it.
Well, Russians do it too, by the way. They cut in line as well.
Yeah, that's the other time it's a Russian.
Okay.
The 10th time it's definitely Russian.
But that's a very,
They just don't travel as much.
it's not, but it's the thing. But that's part of understanding rapport and when people aren't really being rude to you.
No,
okay?
they're just being the way they
it's
are.
the culture. I mean, you grow up in a culture, you live in a culture, it's part of your culture, you do it. I've been yelled at more in Russia than any place ever. I have had people brusquely help me in Russia and in France because it's part of the culture of where they're at. It's understanding that it's not personal. It is what is happening. If everybody jumps in line, then everybody jumps in line. Nobody thinks twice about it where they
No,
live.
it's just what they
so
do.
why wouldn't they do it?
Yeah.
So stop. You're so rude. That is not part of our culture, by the way. It's just Tom. So yeah.
And it's the same thing in the United States. All right, you'll notice that in the South, you can get away with a lot of just being really super friendly. In New York, that won't work. You know why? They're in a hurry.
They're busy.
In New York, you don't have much time to get from A to B. You don't have much time for lunch. New Yorkers aren't necessarily rude. You're in their way. All right, so if you want to talk to somebody, you better do it fast and then get the hell out of the way before they run you over. Completely different, okay? In California, you have to talk about them because they're California and they don't give a shit about anybody else.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. As long as you're talking to California, you're talking about somebody, about them or about what they're doing or what they're interested in. Generalization, but more often.
Well, you're
especially
talking
Los
about
Angeles.
LA actually.
I'm
because,
talking about Los Angeles.
Yeah, Northern California is completely different culture.
Northern California is more like Georgia. So I mean, in Los Angeles, everybody wants to tell you their story.
There has to be a level. A lot of times you can get away with a little bit of subordinate to get your way. But if you want to connect with someone, in California,
Yeah.
there's either equal, but there's always like a self-confidence, it seems. And it'll go a long way there.
You know, and it's true. The filters that other countries put on the U.S. I mean, I think we had a flat rented in Paris, and I think they canceled on us at the last minute specifically because they found out we were from the United States. Okay, so they definitely have filters. The best thing to do is break that filter.
Yeah.
If they, Americans, we're not really loud. We just expect stuff, all right, because it's the way it is here. But over there, it's not that way. So you don't want to be that loud, screaming American. All right, you want to be the opposite of that.
And sometimes you can break out of the funnel, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can more than others. In this instance, we never even actually met the person.
No.
So, but it is interesting. Everybody puts Americans into different funnels, and America is, unless you include Russia, America's bigger than Western Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's if you include Russia and, say, Siberia. So the thing is that it's a huge country. We have so many cultures. But just as Tom was saying, in France, well, France has many cultures. Germany has many cultures. You go east. It used to be you go into East and West Berlin, and the cultures were completely different.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's always, while there are stereotypes, while there is truth to some of the stereotypes, there are also so many different cultures, and you're always going to be testing and paying attention.
Even we went to a wedding where the wife was Russian, and the Russians from Moscow, believe it or not, came up to us during the ceremony. So we normally don't like Americans, but we like you
You're
guys.
okay, yeah. But in
know,
St. Petersburg, we had no such problem.
Yeah.
Very different. I mean, it's
Yeah. But it's
different country,
the point
really.
of all of this is that
Yeah.
you have to understand the culture that you're dealing with
Right.
when you're getting rapport, that you're not just going to go in and use basically the same rapport skills on every single culture. In the United States, it's easier because we're just enormous, all right? And everything in general works here, all right? But when you get down, when you get to Europe and places like that, where England's different than France, it's different than Spain, it's different than, Germany, which is different than Lithuania, which is, I haven't been to Greece, but I'm sure it's different than Greece. It's definitely different in Italy.
in different parts of Italy.
And northern Italy is way different than southern Italy. It's just everything's different. So when you talk about rapport and you talk about internationally, you want to talk about getting to understand the culture and then using the skills within that culture, using positioning in that culture, using your intent inside of that culture,
Right.
using those kinds of skills that we've learned by teaching people from all over the world, what works best in certain areas.